It always starts small, doesn't it? A tiny drip in the wall you can barely hear. A letter you'll get to later. A checkup you'll schedule eventually. You tell yourself it's not a big deal. That's a problem for future you. But later quietly becomes a month. Then 6. Then a whole year goes by. And that tiny price of procrastination you chose to ignore has spiraled into a debt you can no longer afford. This is the story of that year, and the story of a man named Alex. For Alex, the year began in January with a sound. A faint, rhythmic drip. 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 Coming from inside his living room wall. It was annoying, sure, but easy enough to ignore. He just turned the TV up a little louder. He also had a pile of mail growing on his counter. One envelope, with its red urgent stamp, looked particularly nasty. He shoved it to the bottom of the stack. I'll get to it this weekend, he promised himself. Of course, that weekend came and went. By March, the drip wasn't alone anymore. A pale yellowish stain about the size of a dinner plate had bloomed on the drywall. It was ugly, and it was a constant, visible reminder of his inaction. Every time he saw it, a knot of anxiety tightened in his stomach. That letter he ignored? It was now a final notice for an overdue bill, the original amount now bloated with late fees. The shame was sharp. He should have just paid it. But now, facing the music and paying the larger sum felt even harder. So, he did what felt easiest in the moment. He just tried not to think about it. At work, he was assigned a critical project. He knew he should start, but the sheer size of it felt paralyzing. Instead, he spent his days on busy work, clearing out his inbox, doing small, unimportant tasks that tricked him into feeling productive. June was the month the dam broke. Literally. Alex came home from work to the sound of rushing water and his living room floor completely submerged. The small leak had become a burst pipe. The emergency plumber's bill was astronomical. The cost to repair the drywall, replace the ruined floor, and deal with the mold was a financial nightmare he hadn't planned for. That same week he got a call. The unpaid bill had been sent to a collections agency. His credit score, which he'd worked so hard to build, took a nosedive. Professionally, the cost was just as high. His boss, fed up with the lack of progress, demanded the project he'd been putting off. Alex pulled 3 all-nighters, fueled by caffeine and pure panic, to produce rushed, sloppy work. He hit the deadline, but the damage was done. His reputation as a reliable guy shattered. The stress was no longer just in his head. It was physical. He was dealing with constant, dull headaches and found it impossible to get a real night's sleep. By September, the financial vice was crushing him. His savings were gone. Credit card debt was piling up just to cover the repairs. That financial strain poisoned everything. It created this tense, unspoken friction with the people he loved. He became short-tempered and withdrawn. A reminder for his annual health checkup popped up on his phone. He cancelled it. He told himself he couldn't afford the copay, but the truth was deeper. He was terrified of finding one more problem he couldn't handle. It was just easier not to know. Procrastination wasn't just for tasks anymore. It had become his way of coping with life itself. He was trapped in a vicious cycle. The stress of his problems made him procrastinate, and procrastinating only created more stress. December was rock bottom. The moment of brutal accounting. His credit was in ruins, making it impossible to get a loan to clean up the mess. His work performance was so poor, he was put on a formal improvement plan, one step away from being fired. And a nagging health issue he'd been ignoring had become persistent and alarming, filling his sleepless nights with frantic, anxious web searches. He was financially broke, professionally unstable, and sick with worry. The hidden cost was finally out in the open. It was never just the price of a plumber or a late fee. The real cost was his peace of mind, his professional standing, his financial security, and his health. It was the life he could have been living, sold off piece by piece for a few moments of temporary relief. What happened to Alex? What happens to so many of us? Why do we let small, manageable problems fester into these life-altering crises? If you see yourself in this story, if you keep getting stuck in that same loop of stress and avoidance, you need to understand one thing, and it's the most important part of all of this. You are not lazy. Let me say that again. Procrastination is not a character flaw. It's not a time management problem. It is an emotional regulation problem. When you're faced with a task that makes you feel anxious, or bored, or insecure, or just plain overwhelmed, when you're faced with a task that makes you feel anxious, if you see yourself in this story, if you keep getting stuck in that same loop of stress and avoidance, it screams for an escape from that uncomfortable feeling right now. So, you scroll your phone, watch another episode, or suddenly decide to clean the kitchen. Anything for a quick hit of relief. The problem is the logical part of your brain, your prefrontal cortex, knows that deadline isn't going anywhere. This creates a devastating cycle. You procrastinate to feel better, but that leads to guilt and shame. The stress builds as the task looms larger, which makes you feel even more negative, and therefore even more likely to procrastinate again to escape those feelings. You see, you're not avoiding the task. You're avoiding the emotion the task brings up. It's a short-term fix that absolutely guarantees long-term pain. If this is all starting to sound a little too familiar and you're ready to stop trading, if this is all starting to sound a little too familiar and you're ready to stop trading, the stress builds as the task looms larger, which makes you feel even more negative. And therefore pause this for just a second and hit that subscribe button. Think of it as a simple first step toward taking back control. The solution. So how do you break a cycle that's so deeply wired into our brains? You don't do it with some complicated productivity app or a sudden burst of heroic willpower. You do it by understanding one simple, powerful truth. Action is the cause of motivation, not the other way around. You've been waiting to feel ready to act, but the science shows it's the reverse. Action and motivation are a feedback loop, and the only part of that loop you have direct control over is your action. The key is to make that first action so small, so laughably easy that your brain doesn't even have a chance to hit the panic button. Forget fix the leak. Your first step is find contact info for 3 plumbers. Forget pay off all my debt. Your first step is download my credit card statement. Forget write the entire report. Your first step is open a new document and write one single sentence. This is the first step rule. You shrink the task until it's too small to fail. Because that tiny action does something incredible. It proves to your brain that the monster in the closet is just a pile of clothes. It's manageable. That single step creates a tiny bit of momentum, a flicker of motivation that makes the next step just a little bit easier. And the next one, easier still. The climb back in his apartment that December, buried under the weight of a year's worth of avoidance, Alex felt completely paralyzed. The idea of fixing his life felt impossible. But then, he decided to try something different. He wasn't going to fix everything. He was just going to take one step. He picked up his phone. He didn't let himself think about a potential diagnosis or the medical bills. He focused on one thing and one thing only: scheduling the doctor's appointment he had cancelled months ago. He made the call. It took 2 minutes. And when he hung up, nothing had magically been fixed. The debt was still there. His job was still on the line. But for the first time in a year, he felt a spark of something that wasn't dread. It was relief. A tiny sense of control. That one small action didn't solve his problems, but it broke the spell of inaction. Empowered by that feeling, the next day, he took another first step. He didn't try to solve all his debt. He just made a simple spreadsheet to list out exactly what he owed. The day after that, he scheduled a 5-minute meeting to talk honestly with his boss. There was no magic montage. The climb back was slow. It was a year of small, consistent, and often difficult steps. Setting up a payment plan. Showing up to work early. Rebuilding trust. One completed task at a time. Apologizing to the people he had shut out. Each action was small, but when added together, their effect was monumental. He was buying back his life, one tiny decision at a time. The hidden cost of procrastination is immense. It's the stress that robs you of sleep, the opportunities that pass you by, the relationships that fray, and that constant, nagging feeling that you aren't living up to your own potential. The cost of "I'll do it tomorrow" is the life you could be living today. But you can start buying it back. Not with some grand sweeping gesture, but with one imperfect small action. It starts by taking the power away from the overwhelming feeling and giving it back to the first step. So if this story felt familiar, I want you to do 2 things. First, in the comments below, share one small thing you've been putting off. Just putting it out there, naming it, is a powerful first step. And then as soon as you're done here, go take that step. Go do it.